Alright guys, GTR here with a impromptu video. Just wanted to talk about the recent news as reported by Yongwoo Kenzie Kim of the Korean esports journalist website, I wouldn't know what you call it, news website for esports, FOMOS, who tweeted out that the gaming channel OGN, also known as Ongamenet in the past, will be shutting down at the end of the year. There's no source from CJNM, who are the company that own OGN or OGN themselves, that they're confirming the news, but Kenzie is a very seasoned veteran of the Korean esports industry for well over 10 plus years, so I'd take his word for truth. If there's any changes in what OGN's plans are for the future, I guess I'll just put it down in the description. Also put a link down to the tweet that Kenzie made in regards to OGN closing down, but just wanted to record this video. Just got off work and felt like I needed to just talk about the significance of OGN closing down as not only broadcast but also a production company in Korea. So obviously this video is a bit all over the place. I haven't really formulated any sort of script or timeline for the video. So I guess let's just start to the beginning of the 21st century, year 2000. And esports wasn't really a thing. I guess in the West you had CPL with Quake. Early, I'm not even sure if Counter-Strike was part of the circuit as well, but it was mainly just Quake and the guys like Angel Munoz and stuff like that running CPL. And I guess you could say that was one of the starts of what we know as esports globally. And then in Asia you had Korea just coming off a recession in the late 1990s. I believe it was in 97 where the market crashed, and there was an abundance of infrastructure being built for networking in South Korea. And in response to this, because a lot of businesses closed down, there was a big opportunity for former business owners to make internet cafes, which are pretty much areas where people can come in, they can not rent, but they can use a computer at an hourly rate. For the most part, it's pretty cheap. It was around less than $1 USD per hour to use, and it was really a alternative to what was available for recreation back then, before you had internet cafes, or what they call them in Korea as PC bangs. Bang being the name for room in Korean. You had different kinds of bangs. So you had like the Nore bang, which was like the karaoke rooms, or you had I forgot what the Korean term for billiards is, but you had the billiards rooms, and you had just basically different kinds of rooms you could go in and pay an hourly rate to have some recreational time. And thanks to the investment of infrastructure by the Korean government to help the country get out of this economic crisis, when you combine those two and you converge the, I guess, natural entrepreneurship of Koreans, these PC bangs just grew exponentially over the next few years after the financial crisis. And thankfully for us in the West, the Koreans, they found a game that came out in 1998, and it was distributed by a little software company that called Hanbitsoft, and the game that they distributed was a Blizzard Entertainment made game called StarCraft. And I guess I don't really want to delve into the story about how successful StarCraft and later its expansion pack Brood War was in Korea. Obviously, you had games like Diablo 2 and Warcraft 3 and later World of Warcraft expand to Korea, but they weren't as successful in penetrating the gaming market as StarCraft was. So basically, PC Bung, StarCraft, game grew, and out of the game growing, there was obviously going to be competition between players. The gist of it was that you'd have players from each PC Bung represent their PC Bung, and then from there, they'd go represent their region, like the little district that they live in, and then from the district, they represent their the city, and then you'd eventually get to the point where you'd have like championships between the best players of each province, I guess. So it was really grassroots back then. But to get back on topic, OGN, who is OGN basically? So back in 2000, there was actually there is still a cartoon channel, I believe, called Tooniverse, which is obviously now owned by CJ Entertainment Media. And back then, I believe that Tooniverse was owned by the Tongyang Group, which, if you guys know Choco Pies or Orion Choco Pies, they're the people responsible for manufacturing those. But obviously, because it's Korea, you got chaebolls, which are basically just mega conglomerates. I guess in Japanese, you can also call them zaibatsus. Very similar, and the Orion Group owned Tooniverse, and it's pretty funny how Brood War competition began. So basically, the story is that there was a law in the Korean legislation where if you were a Korean cable channel, you needed to have a certain amount of hours in your 24-hour broadcast to make for to fill up quotas for like to promote local broadcasting and all that jazz. So obviously, because Korea wasn't really that much of they animated. They had a lot of animators, but they were basically outsourced. So basically, people from like America or Japan would go to Korea and be like, "Hey, can you animate this for me?" A really famous animator is called Acon or Acom, I think. They did a lot of The Simpsons, and obviously you got a lot of anime being animated in Korea, outsourced to Korea, but they were still considered foreign products or foreign broadcasts. And so basically, Tooniverse were trying to figure out ways to make up for this quota, and they were like, "Oh, well, there's this game called FIFA. Why don't we just have two computers play it out and we just commentate over it?" So they did that for a while, and I believe it was during the World Cup 1998 in France where they did that for the latest FIFA game that came out, and it got viewers. So they're like, "Oh, people actually watch this stuff even though there's no one playing in it." And then they're like, "Oh, there's a game called StarCraft. It's pretty popular. Let's broadcast that." And in 1999, they had the Pro Gamer Korea Open, where the Zerg player Frimura, he won that inaugural tournament, and then from there, the Star League was born. In 2000, Tooniverse hosted the Tooniverse Star League, where obviously everyone knows about how Guillaume Petrie, aka Guru, was the first and only foreigner to win a Star League. And then in 2001, the big wigs, I guess, at Orion Group, they noticed, oh, well, we have enough content that's made domestically to make a channel out of this Star League stuff and other gaming-related things. So from there, they created Ongamenet, which is obviously now known as OGN, but everyone in the West called it OGN. In Korea, everyone called it Ongamenet because that was its name. And then there was for a brief period of time in the mid-2000s where they branded themselves as OnGame before going back to Ongamenet because it caused a lot of confusion. Anyway, yeah, so 2001, Ongamenet was created, spawning off from Tooniverse. Tooniverse went back to just doing anime and animations and all that stuff. Ongamenet, not only they did the Ongamenet Star League as we now know it. That was their marquee production/product that they did. They also did a lot of game review shows, a lot of pre-recorded broadcasts of a lot of Korean-made games that had little mini tournaments. For example, the game Kingdom Under Fire was an RTS that came out. Yeah, actually, when I think about it, there was actually a lot of StarCraft clones trying to cash in on the StarCraft buzz, I guess. So there was Kingdom Under Fire, who, if you guys know the Terran player Midas, he actually started out in Kingdom Under Fire before being recruited to play StarCraft full-time. He was actually one of the most dominant players in that game. You also had Aatrox, was another StarCraft clone that had its little tournaments as well. So you had Ongamenet, and the important thing was that it was a cable channel that was very accessible. I believe only one cable plan out of the entire country didn't have Ongamenet as part of its distribution package. So basically, how Korea works is that most people live in apartments or large dwellings not large dwellings, but large buildings where cable fiber is being threaded through. And obviously there's a lot of cable connections to be set up. And then when everyone wants cable internet, naturally there'll be the telecom companies, say SKT or KTE, will be like, hey, you've got this internet here, why don't we bundle up cable television with it for $2? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? So if you had internet, you pretty much had cable TV. And if you didn't have either of those, you would most likely have satellite TV. So you had Ongamenet. You also had little broadcasting stations or broadcasting channels that did their own VODs. They weren't. I don't think they ever did live broadcasting, but I might be wrong. This needs someone to confirm me. There was what's called GameQ, who specialized in StarCraft as well, but they did little niche events such as Race Wars. They did do a few World Championships, but finding resources about that is pretty rare. You also had Gem TV, which eventually became Game TV. That was another cable television channel. Wasn't as big as Ongamenet or NBC Game, and I believe that folded in around 2005, 2006. Another one, which is really interesting, is ITV, or in Korean, it's called Kyungin Bangsong. And ITV, they were actually a terrestrial television, so basically you can get it without having cable TV, but it was only limited to to a specific region in Korea, which is really interesting. And they did some StarCraft tournaments as well. Notably, it was where July Zerg and I Love OOV made their big splash, I guess, on the professional scene before making it to the OSLs and MSLs in 2003, 2004. And you also had GameBC, which eventually became NBC Game. And that was the eternal rival, quote unquote, of OGN. And that folded when, what was it? I think it folded around late 2010. And that rebranded to NBC Music. So that ended the MSLs and stuff like that. Anyway, so that's basically just how OGN started out. Okay, let's move on to why Ongamenet's so influential. As I'll have some water. Okay, so the influence of OGN's production, cannot be understated. In my opinion, at least, I feel like their productions set the blueprint for what production should be with esports globally. They knew how to market esports in a way similar to traditional sports. You had hype videos, you had interviews. You got to remember as well, back then in the West, there were no there was no like sort of streams that you could watch. At best, you could have like a bootleg, or not a bootleg, but like an audio only like broadcast of the tournament, and then later on you might be lucky to have like a recorded VOD, or or you could have so like let's just say, let's talk about CPL and Counter Strike. You'd have a shoutcast, like a Winamp stream, and then you'd sync it with your HLTV stream, and that's how you'd watch it. You didn't have like any like camera shots or interviews and nothing like that. In Korea, OGN kind of set the precedent for having specific studio space just for esports tournaments. So the first couple studios that they used were just random like areas of their offices, I believe. And then it was in 2000 where they would actually set up a studio inside one of the internet cafes that they own, called the Meg Web Station in COEX, which is one of the, I think it's the largest mall in Seoul, in the Gangnam area. And what was so unique about the Meg Web Studio was that crowds could just walk by and just sit down and watch a production. Obviously, for like the bigger matches, such as like Star League semifinals and stuff, you'd need to like line up. Everything was free, by the way. Like, for the longest time, Korean leagues did not charge for entry. I believe that changed in like 2014 or 15 with LCK or Champions. I'm not really sure on that, but for the most part, every StarCraft tournament, bar one, that was produced by Ongamenet, they never charged at all. Funny story is that the only tournament that they charged an entry fee for, it was a show match between Boxer and Grue, and it was basically to commemorate the last series on the 1.07 patch before they went to the 1.08 patch in late 2000, I believe. And I believe barely anyone showed up because they charged an entry fee for it. So that was the first and only time that they did entry fees for their esports tournaments. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, so basically you could just walk in and just watch stuff. And for the most part, the only tournaments that were actually live and broadcast live were Star Leagues and some WCG qualifier games for global finals, and maybe Kart Rider or something like that. But everything else was pretty much taped beforehand before going to broadcast. So obviously, because OSL and Pro League later on were so marquee, were the marquee programs for Ongamenet, that it would be suicide to just like pre-tape them and not show them live. What else was there? Yeah, MegaWeb Studio was also good in that you had a specific studio for production staff to broadcast out of, so you didn't really have to like move around or anything like that. You didn't have to scurry to find like studio space or anything like that. That was really good. And yeah, I think the main gist of what was so good about the MegaWeb Studio, and later on they moved to the Yongsan iPark Mall, and then after that they moved to the Digital Media City, which was their final studio before folding. Yeah, it's just very accessible for the most part for random people to just come in and rock up and watch. And I think that was a big reason as to why esports was so spread in Korea outside of being available on cable TV. So production of OGN, hype videos, all that stuff. That was so good. Uh, oh. Yeah, as I said, there's no real script to this, so I'm just trying to think of okay. Let's talk about why OGN was eventually going to die. I think it started in 2014 or 15, where Riot took back the rights. I don't know if they took them back, but they basically stopped outsourcing the broadcast rights for their LCK tournament, which is the Premier League of Legends tournament in Korea. Before then, it was both OGN and SpoTV Games splitting the broadcast, very similar to what Casper did with the Pro League, where they split it between OGN and NBC Game before NBC Game folded, and then there was like a one season or two where OGN split it with SpoTV Games before SpoTV took the whole package for itself when OGN pulled out. Yeah, so basically, around, was it? It was when I was in Korea. It was like 2014, 2015. Yeah, I think the last season of LCK was actually 2016, but I'm not too sure. Anyway, it was around that time where a lot of the publishers of these games were deciding to move their productions in-house or find other companies to do their broadcasts. So Riot Games took over the LCK package and they built some LOL Park in, is it Jongno? Somewhere central in Seoul. And then that took a program away from OGN to work on. And then after that, the Apex League for Overwatch was taken away from OGN because not only did Blizzard wanted to make the Overwatch League the Premier League in the world, but also they shifted the Contenders package to NBC Sports, which was a subsidiary of the NBC channel, which is one of the main channels in Korea. So obviously Blizzard thinking that there'd be more exposure on NBC Sports as opposed to OGN. I'm not really too privy on the exact details, but that's how I understand it personally. And then, so with OGN not having the luxury of LCK or Apex or Overwatch, they were pretty much stuck with not that much esports tournaments to work with. They did go very all in on PUBG. It was really popular for maybe the first year and a bit, but then I think the player base and audience dipped dramatically, and unfortunately it was a position that they couldn't really make their way out of. Also COVID, no audiences, very, very hard to justify keeping like studios and producing stuff when no one's going to be able to watch it live. And also they did pick up the Kart Rider League package, which is Kart Rider's actually been around for 15 plus years, and OGN initially did the broadcast for that, and then it moved to SpoTV Games for a few years, and then OGN picked it up again earlier this year, but it looks like it just wasn't enough. And then besides that, you had a lot of miscellaneous tournaments that they did that weren't that big, but still pretty notable, such as Shadowverse Legends, Dungeon Fighter, Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, all those like mobile games where the publishers sponsor it, but they don't really get too many views. So you wouldn't really call them marquee esports products. And then so basically the death of OGN can also be attributed to being on cable TV. One thing to note is that over the past 10 years, a lot of people, like, they probably don't even know it, but they've been transitioning away from cable to IPTV, where to put it in layman's terms, IPTV is just getting your TV from the internet. So you use your internet connection as opposed to like a cable connection or a coaxial aerial connection. And during this time, companies such as Spo TV Games and also Africa TV, formerly known as GOM, they pretty much Africa was GOM, they were only on IPTV, and they used their platform and just were able to leverage their ability to be on IPTV, I guess, over OGN. And yeah, I think also, I believe OGN tried to expand to North America, and they built like a studio and stuff like that. I'm just trying to find out the slipper. So I think they tried to expand to America to do a big like PUBG league, and I might be wrong on this, but I think it didn't really do too well. Like, they have a studio, they had casters there, so I guess that big investment in North America didn't really work out too well for them. So that is some of the reasons why I think OGN folded. It's sad. Like, I might as well just conclude since this video is actually getting to like 30 minutes or so. It is sad to see OGN stop their production or like stop broadcasting. A lot of memories. I remember when I was like maybe 11 or 12, where I first got involved in watching Korean Brood War. It was actually pretty funny how I first got into it. Was there used to be a website hosted by like a Russian guy, and he'd host random VODs on there, and I'd go to my local internet cafe with this, like a blank CD, because I had dial-up at home at the time, and I'd just download all these videos that had broadband connection there, and I'd burn them onto the CD, and I'd go home and watch them. And I eventually found out about teamliquid.net from that website, and that was my first foray into the Korean esports industry. And it's crazy to think, 15 years later, I've been to Korea, I've lived in Korea, broadcast Pro League. I don't think I ever expected to do that ever in my lifetime. Be part of that production cycle. It was an amazing experience. Even though personally I didn't really work on an OGN production, I knew a lot of people that worked there. I went to a lot of their events as part of as a journalist and photographer. Really great company. It's just really, it's sad, but it's also completely, I saw it coming. It's understandable, and with the way that publishers and developers have like the full power over who can broadcast which and what like, programs and stuff like that. I should say, developers and publishers realize that they can dictate how tournaments and productions can go. So with OGN, they can't really make money just selling advertising dollars for YouTube type shows. Like one of their longest running shows is called I forgot the first bit, but like last bit's called Wangaji, where basically they have celebrity speedrun games, and that is one of their more popular shows. But the viewing numbers don't really beat what you can get for like a major league, and that sort of stuff. You can obviously put it on YouTube. You don't really need to broadcast it on cable TV at all. So yeah, I think I'll stop the video here because I've kind of lost points to talk on about. If there's any like questions about OGN or the history of OGN or just Korean esports in general, or broadcasting, I might like just compile a list of these questions and do a follow-up video. It's sad to see OGN folding, but it was eventually going to happen. And I mean, all the power to what's left in Korean esports, which is Afrique TV, Spo TV Games, the two marquee broadcast stations there. And then obviously you got the smaller ones like I believe it's called VSGN, and then a few others working with streamed on Twitch and stuff like that. Nice Game TV as well, who do AWL, the Freak Warcraft League, and the Tekken League as well. So yeah, we'll stop the video here. And yeah, if you have any like responses, questions, or anything like that, just post in the comments and I'll look over them, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video, because I'm not really one to... I prefer talking than writing text. So yeah, thanks for watching this little diatribe.